Let's talk about Nehemiah. You may not know his story, but it's a masterclass in leadership and determination. Nehemiah wasn't a king or a general. He wasn't some battle-hardened warrior. He was actually a cupbearer, a pretty humble job. His role was to serve wine to the king, ensuring it wasn't poisoned. Yet, from this seemingly minor position, Nehemiah pulled off one of the most impressive feats of leadership in ancient history, rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. This wasn't just a simple construction project. This was about bringing hope back to a people who had been through the ringer. Jerusalem, their home, had been destroyed. The walls were broken down, and without them, the city was exposed, vulnerable. It's like trying to live your life without a foundation. Imagine walking into your house, and the roof's caved in, walls falling apart. It doesn't feel secure. That's where the people of Jerusalem were. Now, Nehemiah wasn't living in Jerusalem at the time. He was in Susa, serving the Persian king. But when he heard what was happening, it hit him hard. And this is where his leadership journey begins, right at that moment when you feel called to do something greater than yourself. Nehemiah knew he wasn't a builder or an engineer, but he had one thing that every good leader needs: vision. He saw the potential of what could be, not just the ruins that everyone else saw. Here's the kicker. Nehemiah didn't just jump into the project. He planned. He took his time, assessed the situation, and approached it strategically. That's one of the first lessons in leadership. You don't just dive in because you're motivated. You take a step back, look at what you're facing, and plan. He made sure the king was on his side, which is no small feat considering the risks involved in asking for a favor from royalty. But Nehemiah had a bigger picture in mind. He wasn't afraid to take risks for the sake of his vision. When he arrived in Jerusalem, the walls were in shambles, and the people were worn down. They were living in a constant state of fear, wondering if they'd ever be safe again. Nehemiah didn't just start barking orders or imposing his will. Instead, he rallied the people. He inspired them by showing that this wasn't just about rebuilding walls. It was about rebuilding their sense of pride and security. He tapped into their need for purpose, and that's what good leaders do. They connect the vision to the people. They make them believe in something bigger than themselves. But of course, like any good story of leadership, there were obstacles. This wasn't a smooth ride. Nehemiah faced constant opposition. People outside the city didn't want to see Jerusalem strong again. They tried everything, mocking him, sending threats, even planning attacks to stop the work. And here's where you see Nehemiah's true grit. He didn't give up or get overwhelmed by the negativity. He adapted. He had half of his men building the wall and the other half standing guard, ready to defend the work. They worked with tools in one hand and weapons in the other. That's resilience, adapting to whatever comes your way without losing sight of the goal. Nehemiah wasn't a dictator. He empowered people. He gave them ownership of the project. Families rebuilt the part of the wall closest to their homes, which gave them personal investment in the success of the work. They weren't just following orders. They were building their future, their security. That's the difference between leadership and simply managing a project. Nehemiah understood that if people feel connected to the outcome, they'll give everything they have. But what's even more impressive is how Nehemiah handled internal issues. During the project, there was tension among the people. Some of the wealthier citizens were exploiting the poor. Nehemiah didn't sweep it under the rug. He tackled it head-on, confronting the wealthy and demanding justice. True leadership isn't just about getting the job done. It's about creating an environment of fairness and respect. He reminded everyone that they were in this together and couldn't afford division. Against all odds, Nehemiah and the people finished the wall in just 52 days. Think about that. A task that seemed impossible, done in record time. Not because Nehemiah had all the answers, but because he knew how to bring out the best in people. He showed that leadership isn't about knowing everything. It's about seeing what others can't, pushing through when things get tough, and making sure everyone has a part in the success. So if you're facing a challenge that feels like a broken wall, remember Nehemiah's story. You don't have to have all the skills or experience. What you need is a vision, a plan, and the ability to rally people around that vision. Be adaptable, be resilient, and most of all, be a leader who lifts others up. Because when you do, even the biggest obstacles can be overcome, brick by brick. That's the lesson of Nehemiah. It's not just about rebuilding walls, it's about rebuilding people, purpose, and vision. And that's a lesson that never goes out of style.